There comes a moment in every woman's life when she looks back at the choices she made, especially the ones that cost her something rare, something valuable, something she may never encounter again. And one of the most unsettling realizations a woman can face is the truth of what she actually loses when she hurts a good man. Not the kind of man who is flawless, not the kind of man who never makes mistakes, but the kind of man who genuinely tried, a man who showed up with honesty, a man who cared with sincerity, a man who loved with intention, a man who was present, not because he needed her, but because he chose her. What women fear most after hurting a man like this is not what they admit out loud. It's what settles in the quiet moments, in the late hours, in the stillness where truth echoes louder than pride. Because when a good man walks away, something shifts, not just in him, but in her too. At first, she may justify it. She may tell herself it was his fault, or timing, or circumstances, or compatibility. She may convince herself that she didn't lose anything significant. But when the dust settles, when life moves forward, and when she meets people who talk but never act, people who show up half-heartedly, people who offer attention but not intention, that's when she begins to understand the gravity of what she pushed away. A good man is not common. You don't bump into one around every corner. You don't swipe right on one every day. They are built through discipline, through values, through experiences that soften their edges but strengthen their core. A good man is not a perfect man, but he is a man who tries. And for many women, that realization hits too late. What she fears most is not that he will hate her, not that he will seek revenge, not that he will become someone else. What she fears most is that he will finally realize his own worth without her. She fears the moment he stops waiting for her to change, the moment he stops hoping she will come to her senses, the moment he stops replaying the memories that once made him hold on, because good men hold on longer than most. They forgive more than they should. They overlook the disrespect, the distance, the silence, the inconsistency, the emotional games, because they believe in the connection, they believe in the potential, they believe in her. And when a man like that finally lets go, it's not out of anger, it's out of clarity. And that clarity is terrifying. A woman fears that clarity more than anything else, because a good man doesn't move on loudly. He doesn't post indirect messages. He doesn't seek validation from strangers. He doesn't try to prove a point. He simply withdraws. He becomes silent. He becomes unavailable. He becomes focused on himself. And that, more than anything, shakes her, because she knows deep down that his silence has meaning, his distance has intention, his absence has weight. His lack of reaction is not weakness, it's strength. A woman fears losing access to a man who once made her feel understood, a man who listened even when her words were messy, a man who stayed even when her emotions were chaotic, a man who loved her not because she was easy to love, but because he saw parts of her that she hid from the world. She fears the moment he starts loving himself the way he once loved her, when he gives to himself the energy he used to pour into her, when he begins investing in his growth, his peace, his purpose, instead of trying to heal what she kept breaking. She fears meeting another man and realizing the difference instantly. The difference between someone who wants her for convenience and someone who wanted her for who she truly was. The difference between a man who plays roles and a man who takes responsibility. The difference between a man who uses affection as manipulation and a man who used consistency as love. The difference between someone who makes her feel alone even when he's standing right next to her, and someone who made her feel valued even when he was miles away. There is a fear that creeps in slowly, gradually, quietly when she sees him evolve, when she sees him glowing, healing, becoming better. When she notices he looks happier, more grounded, more centered, more alive. When she sees that someone else might receive the loyalty, the softness, the protection, and the devotion she once rejected. Nothing unsettles a woman more than knowing another woman will enjoy the version of him she inspired but never appreciated. And the fear intensifies when she realizes he's no longer reachable. Not emotionally, not mentally, not spiritually. She fears that he might love someone else someday with the same intensity he once loved her, but this time in a way that grows instead of breaks. She fears he will become someone's safe place, someone's comfort, someone's person. And she fears that the woman he chooses next will receive the commitment she never respected, the patience she took for granted, the love she misused, the time she wasted, and the respect she didn't reciprocate. One of the deepest fears a woman has after hurting a good man is facing the truth of herself, realizing that she pushed away something stable because she wasn't ready for stability. That she rejected something genuine because she was too comfortable with chaos. That she sabotaged a good man because she didn't know how to receive good love. That she confused his calm nature with weakness, not understanding it was emotional maturity. That she mistook his forgiveness for desperation, not realizing it was compassion. That she interpreted his effort as over-attachment, not seeing it was commitment. There comes a moment when she has to face the mirror, and the mirror shows her not who he was, but who she was with him. and who she refused to become because of her own fears. A good man challenges a woman to rise, to communicate better, to trust deeper, to love more honestly, to heal her wounds, to confront her insecurities. And sometimes she runs, not because he is wrong for her, but because he is too right too soon. But the real fear begins when she matures, when she learns, when she grows, when she becomes emotionally aware enough to see what she lost. Because healing has a way of bringing clarity. Growth has a way of exposing truth. Time has a way of revealing value. And the more she evolves, the more she realizes that the man she hurt was not ordinary. He was a blessing she wasn't prepared to receive. What she fears most is that there is no return. No reset button. No second chance. Good men rarely go back. They don't revisit what broke them. They don't return to old versions of themselves. They don't reopen closed chapters. They don't retrieve people who refuse to try with them. When a good man is done, it is final. And that finality is what haunts her. She fears that she will never again feel that level of emotional safety, that level of purity, that level of loyalty, that level of reassurance, because the world is full of men who love the idea of a woman, but not the responsibility of her heart. The world is full of men who demand respect they do not give, who ask for loyalty they will not return, who want softness they do not protect, who seek love they do not nurture. But a good man, he stands out. He stays consistent. He shows up differently. And when she loses that, she fears she may never experience it again. She fears that he will forget her, that her name will no longer soften his eyes, that her memory will no longer warm his heart, that he will no longer wonder how she is, no longer replay their moments, no longer hold on to the possibility of what they could have been. She fears becoming a lesson instead of a love, a memory instead of a priority, a reminder instead of a reason. She fears realizing that she was the one who let go of something real while chasing what was temporary. And deep down, she fears the truth every woman eventually faces. Losing a good man doesn't hurt immediately. It hurts gradually. It hurts when life tests her with people who lack depth. It hurts when she sees him healed and growing. It hurts when she realizes he finally saw his worth. It hurts when she understands she'll never again be loved by him the way he once loved her. It hurts most when she recognizes that he was not replaceable, not comparable, not repeatable. What women fear most after hurting a good man is finding out what they truly lost. There is a particular kind of silence that follows the loss of a good man, a silence that doesn't scream but whispers relentlessly. It's the silence that settles in the spaces where his presence used to live, his laughter, his patience, his calm energy. A silence that reminds her over and over again that stability once stood beside her, and she didn't recognize it. It is in this quiet that her fears settle in, not in the moments when she is surrounded by noise and distractions, but in those late hours when the world grows still and the mind finally tells the truth she avoided. What she fears most is not the man moving on. It is the moment she realizes he has healed in a way she hasn't. Because men like him don't stay broken forever. They learn, they evolve, they rise. And that rise comes with a clarity that hurts her in ways she never expected. A good man doesn't become bitter, he becomes wiser. He doesn't close his heart, he protects it better. He doesn't lose himself, he finds himself more deeply. And this transformation terrifies her because she knows she planted the seed of his growth, but will never taste its fruit. She fears watching him become the man she always dreamed he would be, but for someone else. She fears seeing him display laughter she once inspired, confidence she once encouraged, strength she once admired. She fears that the love she mishandled will become the foundation of another woman's happiness. And the greatest fear of all is the realization that his love didn't die. It simply changed direction, and she is no longer standing where it leads. There's also the fear of recognition, the moment she sees how differently he treats the next woman. Not because she is better, but because he learned what not to give to someone who wasn't ready. She fears that he is now more intentional, more guarded, more selective, that he gives his energy, his time, his devotion to someone who will not misuse it as she did. She fears the day she sees him protect another woman's heart with the same strength he once used to protect hers. And she fears knowing that this time he chose wisely. Another fear creeps in when she meets new men, when she realizes how rare it truly was to have someone who approached love with maturity instead of ego, purpose instead of impulse, presence instead of excuses. She will compare without wanting to compare. She will notice without trying to notice. She will see how inconsistent others are, how selfish they are, how unpredictable they are. She will feel the difference deeply, painfully, unavoidably. And in that comparison, she fears the truth she once denied, that she let go of something extraordinary while chasing what was ordinary. And then there is the fear of accountability, the moment she realizes the damage was not caused by him, by timing, or by fate, but by her own unhealed wounds. She fears confronting the parts of herself she ignored, the insecurity that made her push him away, the fear of vulnerability that made her sabotage the connection, the emotional walls she refused to lower, the pride that kept her from apologizing, the ego that made her think he would wait forever. She fears admitting that she broke something she wasn't prepared to hold, something she didn't know how to nurture. That truth hurts more than anything else. Because a good man doesn't leave because he stopped caring, he leaves because caring alone and cannot sustain what the other person refuses to reciprocate. And once he leaves, he rarely looks back. His silence becomes a mirror for her to examine herself. His absence forces her to acknowledge the love she mishandled. His distance becomes a reminder that she used to matter and now she doesn't. What women fear most after hurting a good man is not just losing him, it's losing the version of themselves he brought out. With him, she was softer. With him, she was emotionally safer. With him, she felt chosen without having to compete. With him, she felt seen in ways that made her feel whole. And without him, she feels the emptiness of her own emotional chaos. She feels the heaviness of her own unhealed wounds. She feels the discomfort of facing life without someone who once balanced her. There is also the fear that she might not get another opportunity to love at that level, not because she is unworthy of love, but because she now understands the emotional currency of commitment, effort, consistency, and loyalty. She fears that the next man won't text back with the same sincerity, that he won't show up with the same reliability, that he won't protect her heart the same way, that he won't offer the same emotional depth. She fears receiving shallow love after rejecting deep love. She fears receiving short-term attention after losing long-term devotion. And then comes the fear that her actions rewrote the way he sees women. She worries that his experience with her may have hardened him, that he may have learned to withhold affection, trust, vulnerability, all because she mishandled what he gave so freely. She fears he might become more closed off, not because of who she is now, but because of who she was then. She fears knowing she contributed to the emotional barriers he builds in the future. But the fear grows stronger when she realizes he no longer depends on her emotional validation, when he no longer seeks her attention, when he no longer reacts, when he no longer checks her profiles, when he no longer watches her stories, when he no longer feels triggered by her silence, when her absence no longer bothers him, when her presence no longer excites him, when everything she once used to control him emotionally no longer works. That is the moment reality hits her hardest. She has lost her influence. There is something unsettling about watching a man she once had wrapped around her heart become completely indifferent. She fears that indifference more than anger. Anger means he still feels something. Indifference means she is now irrelevant. She fears being forgotten. She fears being replaced. She fears being erased from the narrative of his life. And she fears knowing she brought all of it upon herself. She also fears the memory of him becoming more perfect in hindsight. Time beautifies what we took for granted. Distance sharpens the value of what we once overlooked. And as she reflects, she fears the creeping realization that he wasn't just good. He was exceptional in ways she didn't have the wisdom to appreciate. She recalls the little things he did, things that seemed small at the time but now feel massive. His patience, his forgiveness, his attempts to understand her, his emotional presence, his willingness to work through problems, his desire for peace, not power, his capacity to love deeply. Every detail becomes a reminder. Every memory becomes a lesson. Every moment becomes a regret. But the fear grows even stronger when she begins to wonder if she ever truly deserved him in the first place. Not because she is unworthy of love, but because she realizes she did not match his emotional readiness. She fears the truth that she may have been the storm in a life he only wanted to keep peaceful. She fears understanding that she was the reason he doubted himself, questioned his value, or felt unseen. She fears knowing he gave her everything he had, and she offered only half of what he needed. What women fear most is not that he will find someone better, it's that he deserved better than what she gave him. She fears that another woman will treat him the way he always deserved to be treated. That she will love him maturely, communicate honestly, support him emotionally, and appreciate his efforts. And she fears knowing that everything she failed to be for him, another woman will naturally become. The fear becomes heavier when she sees him thriving alone, when he begins to succeed without her, when he grows without her, when he finds happiness without her. Because she once believed he needed her, but now she sees he only needed himself. And this realization shakes her deeply, because she knows she once held a place in his life that can never be regained. For that place is now filled by his own self-respect. And in the quiet of her reflection, she fears the one truth she cannot escape, that losing a good man is not like losing any other man. Losing a good man reshapes the way she views love. It recalibrates her standards. It challenges her to grow. It forces her to heal. It demands self-reflection. And most of all, it reveals the depth of what she allowed to slip away. She fears the permanence of that loss, the way it lingers, the way it teaches, the way it shifts her. Because deep down, she knows she will remember him for the rest of her life, not because he was perfect, but because he loved her in a way that left an imprint on her soul. And that is what women fear most after hurting a good man, the realization that his love was not replaceable, that his presence was not temporary, that his value was not visible until he was gone. They fear the truth that he was the part of their story they should have protected, nurtured, and cherished, but instead allowed pride, fear, and emotional immaturity to destroy. They fear knowing that losing him was not fate, it was a choice. Their choice. And choices have consequences that no apology, no regret, and no memory can undo. With time, another fear takes shape. The fear that she may cross paths with him one day and see in his eyes not love, not longing, not pain, but peace. A peace that has nothing to do with her anymore. A peace she did not help build. A peace she once disrupted, a peace he had to create on his own after she left him wounded. That moment, if it ever comes, will remind her of everything she lost in silence. Because when a good man heals, he becomes untouchable. Not in arrogance, not in pride, but in self-awareness. He knows who he is now. He knows what he brings. He knows what he no longer tolerates. And she fears that version of him, the one who now has boundaries, the one who will never again allow someone to break him the way she did, the one who has learned to say no, to walk away, to choose himself. Because the man she once knew, the forgiving one, the overly patient one, the man who stayed too long, no longer exists. In his place stands a man who has upgraded his spirit, his heart, and his expectations. And she fears knowing she was part of the reason for that transformation, but not someone who will benefit from it. She also fears the day she fully heals herself. Because healing comes with honesty, and honesty forces her to admit truths she once avoided. She will realize she didn't lose him by accident. She lost him because she didn't know how to hold someone who loved her right. She feared his love because it demanded vulnerability. She rejected his consistency because she was used to chaos. She doubted him because she had not yet learned to trust herself. And healing will reveal that the damage she caused